Hello, Wake Up New Zealand, Cara Saty speaking. I've just been looking at the glossary, the terms, how they describe things in the government, like climate adaptation, mitigation, and all that shit. How they describe it, and I thought to myself, climate adaptation. What are they saying about that? And let's dig a bit further. Adaptation in human systems, they go, the process of adjusting to actual or expected climate and its effects to moderate harm or take advantage or have beneficial opportunities. Human intervention may help these systems to adjust to expected climate and its effects. Human intervention may help systems and its effects. However, upon research, I decided to find out more about these climate adaptations. So I looked at scientists. He was a UNIPCC scientist, author for their climate assessment reports. Now, Dr. William Schlesinger own admission that only 20% of UN IPCC scientists deal with the climate. That means 80% don't. They don't know jack shit. They have not studied climate. They are not climate experts. And he goes on to say to have expert knowledge about climate, it requires a wide range of disciplines. There are more than 100 subsets of disciplines involved in climate change studies. So he was calling them out. So who is a prominent scientist, a climate scientist? There's no specific climate discipline and claims of overwhelming majority of scientists exposed. There's only 94 authors responsible for compiling a report in which the IPCC case for alarm risks. So the notion of climate tipping points is used, the one that Al Gore created when he was vice president in America. He is influential now and has been in the World Economic Forum. So even David Seymour, in his book of 2017, calls out Al Gore, saying that in 2006, he said we only had 10 years to fix this planet. 2023 now, there you have it. So you had David Seymour calling him out in 2017, page 170. Own Your Own Future, A Liberal Vision of New Zealand, 2017, author David Seymour, published by ACT Party. So they talk about the 190-year tipping point, despite the fact that the UN began a 10-year climate tipping point in 1989. Nothing seems to fit. So these tipping points were about hours, days, months, years, millennium. Earth seriously doomed. So narcissist James Hansen descended into a political and ideological activism. He's supposed to be a scientist for IPCC, the UN. He became a political activist. And he was arrested a couple of times for his activism, protesting against coal. And he endorsed a book titled Ridding the World of Industrial Civilization. He wanted to collapse cities around the world and wanted to switch to greenhouse emissions, blowing up dams, razing cities to the ground. Grist Eco magazine writer Davis Roberts noted in August 2010, I know I'm not supposed to say this, but James Hansen managed his transition from scientist to activist terribly. All influence is lost. Then goes on to Obama. Oh, I read Obama's Zombies. It's well worth a read. I picked it up at the op shop. And it goes on about Obama and his zombies on Earth Day, how they talked about buying camels as pets and actually putting their feet in cow dung to keep them warm. I had to laugh, but some of the stuff in there actually opens your eyes to what Obama was up to. So Obama's science advisor, John Ardern, was ridiculed for claiming the Arctic would be ice-free in the winter. So this is what happened as deliberately leaders around the world adopted non-binding agreements about this climate change and all this ridiculous stuff that was going on that was not true, deliberate fictions, and they adopted them. They were non-binding agreements and still are non-binding agreements, but the thing that happens is they get ratified, like in New Zealand, set in a place called soft law, so that the government can actually get them very quickly, very, very quickly, without you knowing, and enter them into domestic policy, making them law. And you won't even know anything about them till they tell you there's a new act. They won't even tell you. You have to find that out for yourself. There's a lot they don't tell you. So we're talking about, let's go back to Al Gore. Well, Al Gore's documentary was supposed to have been shown in school classrooms in the UK, but one of the parents wasn't happy about that and said, look, I don't believe this shit. So he went to court, took Al Gore's documentary to court, The Inconvenient Truth. The court concluded it was not to be shown in schools because of the inaccuracies in that documentary. Now, that's the documentary that the UN have been following. This is the climate doomers, the climate alarmists, and here we have Al Gore sitting as an influential person at the World Economic Forum that actually partners the UN, the World Economic Forum that has been party to the UN since the early 1970s. After all, you have Klaus Schwab, who was a student of Henry Kissinger's. So, join the dots. And then there's the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. Join the dots. And then you have Zelensky's #1 minister for digital services agency became Klaus Schwab's global shaper. Joining Ardern, Macron, and Trudeau, and all those others. Putin as well. So what's the next eco scare? Humans, domestic animals? We sure are targeted, aren't we? We are the problem. Now, isn't it strange that the World Bank, the IMF, they set a population replacement level for all countries around the world, all the same, and that is 2.1. So if you go 2.1, the population level means that's to replace the population in that country. So in New Zealand, we are now 1.6, and many countries around the world are depopulating. So right now, the thing is, the WEF, the UN, and governments are talking about degrowth. Degrowth of consumption, degrowth of services, degrowth of industrialization, all of that stuff, along with decolonization, because it was the colonials that actually brought the growth to these countries like New Zealand. The bridges, the roads, and the factories, the hospitals, the education, the schools, and on and on and on. Now, the UN are saying that, and the WEF and the COP28 conference, King Charles said he's relying on the indigenous people of the world that are very sacred. And WEF says they are the front and the center of our global agenda working. They are people of the forest, romanticizing on the history of tribal feudalism. And this is happening everywhere. Indigenous was created in late 1969 by Pakapuni from northern Tanzania. And then you had the president of the World Indigenous Peoples Council, who came over here, George Manuel, of the Indian Canadian Brotherhood, and preached it to Maori politicians here to take that phase up. Indigenous people, so all people around the world with native ancestors will be called Indigenous. That was in early 1970s that George Manuel came over here and spoke to a Maori entertainment troupe and Maori politicians here, and they jumped on board. Hence, the UN brought in the UNDRIP declaration that says that the indigenous people, own all the land. They have veto rights over Parliament. They own the water. They own the resources. And this is what has happened. They are using those with Maori ancestors to push a global agenda. So we're talking about disease, and we're talking about the pandemic. This isn't the end of it. And we're talking about the climate bullshit, the climate fear, using fear for compliance. And this is what some of those iwi have done to these people with Maori ancestry. Traitors. So this is one nation, one law. We do not need this separatism that is being used by this government. And I'm so glad that now Peters is saying, no, we're going to get rid of all that shit. We need to do that. So we're now talking about climate alarmism, where through a Kigali UN treaty, UN amendment, where they are going to totally halt the cooling systems in cars, the services on those, your gas heaters in your houses, the gas bottles for barbecues, etc. Food packaging, certain food packaging for frozen foods, and the list goes on and on and on, and commercial domestic refrigeration. And that's the next thing. And who will pay? The consumer pays every time. It will be the domestic and the commercial consumers who are going to pay. So this is what's happening. This climate bullshit. And I was really taken by surprise that National Party has sent one of its ministers, the climate change minister, over to the UN COP28 meeting that's happening right now, and he has signed a UN declaration on climate change. The climate change where they will have interlinked with food, agriculture, the whole damn lot, and the pandemic. They have intertwined it all together because they're at a point of desperation, because people are waking up and more governments are becoming conservative. The people are pushing because they have woken up. They are not standing for it anymore. So let's talk about scientists that speak up. 1,000 international scientists spoke up about the man-made global warming claims. This was released in December 2010, 2009 and 2007, and it was a report about the skepticism is the first step towards the truth, they said. The following scientists, and they give all the names of the scientists, said they rejected the projections of this catastrophic man-made global warming. It just wasn't true. And then you had Guru James Lovelock, warned in 2007. He was with the UN. Before the century's over, billions of us will die, and the few breeding pairs of people that survive will be in the Antarctic. Lovelock illustrated how the climate of the climate change movement have transformed into in last year. In May 2010, Lovelock shocked the world by announcing, everybody might be wrong, climate change may not happen as fast as we thought, and we may have 1,000 years to sort it out. Using climate change, very easy, isn't it? We all know that climate change exists, so they make it very hard to debate it. We know it exists, but, what are they going to do? Stop all the volcanoes under the sea? Stop all the volcanoes all over the world? What are they going to do? This is bullshit. So then you've got the Gaia worshippers. Gaia is referred to Mother Earth, but some refer to Gaia as a lady who's remained broadly the same underneath, but can wear many clothes for many weathers and many fashions. She has no particular tenderness for humans. She doesn't like humans because of their carbon footprints. Gaia emerged from chaos, the Greek Gaia, from chaos. And some people even believe that Gaia created most things in this world, including humans, who are supposed to come from the clay of the earth. Gaia, a figure of creation by Greeks, a figure of imagination by climate alarmist geeks. Gaia worship the new pagan religion, cultism, paganism that rejects Christianity. Step aside for Gaia. It says there's nothing under the sun, but climate alarmists, they don't even believe in the sun. IPCC don't recognize the sun. No one recognizes the sun. It's all about the sun, people. But they ignore the sun. So, Gaia theory is the rejection of God and creation, God and Christianity. So now we're living in the times of communist degrowth. The WEF and economy degrowth theory, 15th to 7th, 2022 on the WEF website. And they say, why does this matter right now? The degrowth theory was a radical economic theory born in the 1970s. This means shrinking rather than growing the economy. To use less of the world's dwindling resources, they believe that the economic growth is to blame for all the ills of the world. Malthusianism by Thomas Malthus of the 1700s. He said that the growth of populations worldwide would outgrow the resources we need to feed those populations. But he was proven wrong. He didn't take into account technology, the spreading of agriculture worldwide, the advancements that would be made, and he didn't take into consideration population degrowth, what's happening now, but they are all still following Thomas Malthus, every one of them. And you look at this degrowth thing that they're all practicing. Ardern and her happiness indicators she brought about in 2019. Well, how is that? happiness indicators where you have children being taught the seas are rising. We could get drowned. Got to do something about that now. Make them scream. Make them shout. Climate change for schools. The earth is burning. And this is what they're being taught. Fear to compliancy, to scream out, do something about it, use the children. In England, mental health services, there is a new mental health disorder. Well, from a couple of years ago, and it's still going, and it's getting worse. It's called eco-anxiety, and young people are actually suffering from eco-anxiety, and it's widely reported over there. They don't report it here. Children having nightmares, can't sleep, anxious, depressed, nervous, because they are being taught about this climate alarmism. One movie I saw on a UNA website where they teach the children, you have the planet, Earth, the globe, going round and round and round, and there's a storks flying round the world, getting ready to land with napkins with newborn babies in, ready to drop them on the earth, probably under a cabbage tree, but never mind. So, and suddenly the world, the globe catches fire, the big flames come out, and the storks fly off with the babies. They don't land. What does that say? Don't have children because the earth is on fire. And they call this happiness indicators. Almost every country in the world have swapped the GDP, gross domestic product, to measure the economy for happiness indicators, metric happiness indicators. So people who were locked down, these restrictions where they have bottle shops open, but they closed the butchers, you couldn't get your hair done, you couldn't go and see Nana, you couldn't go and see your mum, you couldn't go anywhere unless you had the damn jab, you lost your job if you didn't have it. And look how those people were treated in parliamentary grounds. I could not believe that. Rubber bullets, kicking, pushing elderly people. That was disgusting, so shameful. And all of them sat in Parliament and thought that was okay. I didn't think our country would ever come to that. I will never forget it. Never. Under Ardern's happiness indicators, people dying from the jab. Under Ardern's happiness indicators, people severely had adverse reactions to the jab. Under happiness indicators, people lost their jobs under happiness indicators. Climate bullshit under happiness indicators. And that's what you're looking at, people. So maybe we need to talk to the government about these happiness indicators. They need to be gone. We need to get back to gross deposit, gross GDP. I know. I get quite angry about it all, to think that our government treated us all like this. Those courageous people in Wellington. My heart goes out to you. I think of Cassie, I think of Rob, who I've managed to actually meet and speak with Rob. Beautiful people. And Anna, Cassie's mum. They're just a few. And yes, we need a criminal investigation, and that should include the way those people were treated in parliamentary grounds. Wake up, New Zealand.